The first thing I noticed when I got home that night was the front door. It was unlocked. I always locked it. Every single night. My name is Ethan, and at the time, I was 24 years old. I lived alone in a small two-story house outside Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't a big house. 2 bedrooms upstairs, a kitchen and living room downstairs, and a small basement that I barely used. That Friday night, I got home around 11:40 p.m. I remember the time because I checked the clock while taking off my shoes. I had worked late, and all I wanted was something to eat and a few hours of sleep. I stepped inside. The house was completely dark. I reached for the light switch. Nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. I thought the bulb had burned out. Then I noticed something that made me stop. The kitchen light was already on. I could see it from the hallway. I knew I hadn't left it on. I always turned the lights off before leaving. I slowly walked toward the kitchen. Everything looked normal. Then I noticed the back door. It was closed, but the deadbolt was unlocked. I walked over and locked it. Then I checked the front door again. Locked. I told myself there was probably a simple explanation. Maybe I had forgotten to lock it. Maybe I was tired and simply didn't remember. I made myself something to eat and sat on the couch. About 20 minutes later, I heard a noise upstairs. A soft thump. I stopped chewing. I listened. Nothing. Then another sound. A floorboard creaked. Slowly, I looked toward the staircase. Hello. No answer. I waited. Another creak. This time, it sounded like someone had taken a step. I grabbed my phone. I considered calling the police, but I felt stupid. What was I going to tell them? I think my house made a noise. So I stood up. I turned on the hallway light. Then I walked toward the stairs. Halfway up, I stopped. My bedroom door was open. I always kept it closed. I don't know why, but seeing that door open made my stomach tighten. I continued upstairs. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The second bedroom. Empty. The closet. Empty. Finally, I entered my bedroom. Nothing. Everything looked normal. I laughed quietly. You're being paranoid, I told myself. Then I noticed my closet. The door was slightly open. I walked toward it. I pulled it open. Nothing. Just clothes. I shut it. Then I went downstairs. I decided to sleep on the couch. At around 2:30 a.m., I woke up. I didn't know what had woken me. The television was still on. I looked around. Everything seemed normal. Then I heard it. A very quiet sound from upstairs. 3 footsteps. Step. 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 I sat up. My heart started beating faster. I grabbed my phone. The screen said 2:31 a.m. Then I heard something else. A floorboard creaked directly above me. I stared at the ceiling. Someone was upstairs. There was no doubt about it anymore. I called 911. I whispered my address and told the dispatcher that I thought someone had entered my house. She told me to stay downstairs and wait outside if I could do so safely. I looked at the front door. It was only about 15 feet away. I slowly stood up. I took one step, then another. I reached for the doorknob, and that's when I heard my bedroom door upstairs slam shut. I ran. I opened the front door and sprinted across the street. I waited behind a neighbor's car. About 5 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. They entered the house. I watched from across the street. 10 minutes passed. Then one of the officers came outside. He told me they couldn't find anyone. They checked every room, every closet, the basement, even the attic. Nobody was there. One officer asked me if anything was missing. I checked. Nothing. They told me there was no obvious sign of forced entry. Before leaving, one officer said something that I still remember. Make sure you change your locks. I did. The next day, I also installed 3 security cameras. One facing the front door, one facing the backyard, and one pointed toward the staircase. For the next few days, nothing happened. I started relaxing again. Then, on Tuesday night, my phone gave me a notification. Motion detected. I opened the camera app. The camera pointed toward my staircase. The timestamp said 3:07 a.m. At first, I couldn't see anything. Then I noticed movement. Someone was standing at the top of the stairs. I froze. The figure was completely dark. I couldn't see their face. I immediately called the police. While I was waiting, I watched the camera. The person didn't move. They just stood there. Then the camera feed suddenly went black. The police arrived. They searched the house again. Nothing. But this time, they found something. A small window in my upstairs bathroom was unlocked. It was barely large enough for someone to climb through. The officer told me it was possible someone had entered that way. I asked him why they would come inside and not steal anything. He didn't have an answer. Neither did I. I started sleeping at my friend's apartment. I didn't want to stay in that house anymore. 3 days later, I went back with my friend, Jake, to collect some clothes. We were inside for maybe 10 minutes when Jake stopped walking. Did you hear that? I looked at him. Hear what? He pointed toward the stairs. I thought I heard someone upstairs. We stood silently. Nothing. Then we heard it. 3 slow footsteps. Step, step, step. Jake looked at me. You're not messing with me, right? No. We left immediately. That night, I decided I was done. I called the landlord and told him I wanted to break the lease. He agreed without arguing. That surprised me. Then I asked him something. Has anyone ever broken into that house before? There was silence. Finally, he said, not exactly. What does that mean? He sighed. The previous tenant complained about someone entering the house. My stomach dropped. Someone. He said things kept moving. Did you ever find out who? No. I asked him when the previous tenant moved out. He gave me a date. 6 months earlier. Then he said something that made me go completely silent. He left most of his belongings behind. I asked why. The landlord said. He told me he didn't want to go back inside. I never asked anything else. I moved out 2 weeks later. I thought that was the end of it. Until I checked my old security camera account. The cameras were still connected to the house. I logged in one final time. I wanted to delete the account. Before I did, I noticed an old recording. The date was the night I first thought someone was inside. I opened it. The camera showed my staircase. Nothing happened for several minutes. Then, at 2:29 a.m., something appeared at the top of the stairs. A person. They slowly walked down. I watched them carefully. They stopped halfway down the staircase. Then they looked directly toward the camera. I couldn't see their face, but I could see something in their hand. A phone. The person raised the phone toward the camera. The screen lit up. It was displaying a message. I paused the video. I zoomed in. The message said, "He's awake." I felt sick. Because at 2:29 a.m., I was asleep downstairs. I kept watching. The person slowly turned around. They walked back upstairs and disappeared into my bedroom. I replayed the video. Then I noticed something I'd missed. The person wasn't coming down the stairs from upstairs. They were coming out of the hallway beside my bedroom. The hallway that led to the bathroom window. The window that the police said was unlocked. I closed the video. I deleted the camera account. I never went back. But there's one thing I still don't understand. If the person entered through the bathroom window, how did they know exactly when I was awake? And why did they never take anything? Because the last thing I saw in that recording wasn't the message. It was the final frame. Right before the person disappeared, they were standing inside my bedroom, looking directly at my bed. And beside them was a second person, someone I never saw enter the house.